to the Exploration Lab. Today, we're taking on the role of rhetorical analysts to uncover how a Renaissance author's choices impacted his readers. This lab is full of tools to help us zoom in closer on a text than ever before. We'll start by examining the rhetorical situation of today's Renaissance text. And what better assistant than someone from the Renaissance itself? Meet Renaissance Man, our holographic assistant, programmed with all the wit and wisdom of the era.
Greetings, analysts. What an age to explore. The Renaissance was a time of breakthroughs, science, art, and literature flourishing like never before. But no invention quite so clever as me, of course.
Well, you're here just in time. We're studying Utopia by Thomas More, one of the most intriguing works of Renaissance literature.
Ah, Utopia, a fictional conversation between More and some friends crafted to challenge readers to think about society.
Speaking of challenges, we're about to analyze More's rhetorical choices in the text. But before we start, can you give us some context, like a snapshot of the time he was writing in?
With pleasure. The Renaissance was all about exploration. Europeans discovering places they'd never seen, ideas about humanity's potential blossoming, and questions about how a perfect society would look arising. But Europe was far from perfect. Inequality, corruption, and politics made questioning authority risky.
So if authors wrote about the real problems they noticed in society at the time, they might have gotten in trouble with the authorities. So why might an author choose to write about societal problems in a fictional way?
Indeed, an author might need to tread carefully to avoid repercussions, like the ones More himself faced later in life. You know, he was executed for treason after daring to oppose King Henry VIII. But in Utopia, his ideas remain more subtle, and he was quite careful in how he presented them.
That's some interesting stuff. But now it's time to dig deeper into More's rhetorical choices. How did More's fictionalized critique impact his readers, and what message did this send?
Well, Caroline, this is where you take over with this language experiment. Your mission? Analyze how the rhetorical choices Thomas More makes in Utopia impact his audience, message, and purpose.
Well, there you have it. Let's tackle this together. Fire up the rhetorical analysis microscope, grab your guided notes, and we'll get started on today's language experiment. We'll start our experiment with one of More's most intriguing rhetorical choices, the title. Have you ever heard the word utopia? Well, Thomas More actually invented it. And not only that, he chose it as the title of his work. He must have had a really good reason for bothering to make up a whole new word for his title, so let's examine it more closely. The term utopia comes from two Greek roots, utopos, meaning good place, and utopos, meaning no place. This dual meaning sets up tension. On one hand, it suggests an ideal society, a good place we might want to aspire to. But on the other, it hints that such a place doesn't or can't exist. To better understand More's rhetorical choice, let's use these three questions to help us look through our rhetorical analysis lens and consider how the title shapes the message, purpose, and impact of this text. So, what choice did the author make? Well, More coined a term for the title with two conflicting meanings, good place and no place. He created a title with a double meaning and just threw it out there for the audience to decide what it really meant. He never tells us what he actually thinks. How do you think this choice affects the audience and message? Pause the video and jot down your thoughts. By choosing a title with a double meaning, Moore creates an open ended experience for his readers, leaving them to grapple with the questions on their own. Is Moore saying Utopia is a model society to strive for? Or is he making a critique by saying a utopia should never actually exist? This approach encourages the audience to reflect on their own beliefs about society, making them active participants in the text. But why might Moore have wanted to create this effect? I mean, he is choosing to be so confusing. He could just tell us what he thinks, but nope, he refuses. Why does he do that? Well, think back to what we learned about this time from our trusty Renaissance man. In the politically charged environment of the Renaissance, directly critiquing powerful institutions could be dangerous. So, in a text where Moore makes some comments about society that may go against authority, he chooses an ambiguous title with two totally different meanings. Instead of coming right out and saying clearly what his beliefs are, Moore sets it up so the audience must reflect on their own beliefs. Why might he have wanted to create this effect? Pause the video and jot down your thoughts. He was totally shielding himself. By using ambiguity, he could keep himself away from the consequences of speaking out against the ideas of those in power. He was protecting himself, while still challenging his audience to think critically. Very clever, Moore. Now that we've explored the title, let's get into the text of Utopia. The work is framed as a fictional conversation between three characters: Thomas More, his real-life friend, Peter Giles, and the fictionalized philosopher and expert world traveler, Raphael Hythloday. Moore created this imaginary character, Hythloday, to share the description of the newly discovered society of Utopia. Utopia is an imagined society that operates very differently from Moore's Europe, filled with ideas that were considered highly controversial. For example, in Utopia, money doesn't exist and no one owns any private property. Depending on the reader, these ideas could be interpreted as critiques of European society, suggestions for an ideal world, or even as evidence that such concepts are unrealistic. So, Mr. Ambiguous, our author Thomas More, includes himself and his real-life friend as characters in this conversation, but then invents Hythloday, an expert world-traveling character, to tell us about this potentially controversial place. And here's what makes this choice really intriguing. Hythloday's name in Greek means speaker of nonsense. So Moore created a character who is presented as a credible expert, but then gives him a name that makes him totally unreliable? Why would he do that? Let's think about this through a rhetorical analysis lens. How does this choice affect the audience and message? Why might Moore have wanted to create this effect? Pause the video and jot down your thoughts. By presenting Hythloday as both credible and unreliable, Moore forces the audience to decide what they think about his ideas. Just like his choice with the title Utopia, Moore's choice of name for the Hythloday character makes it super unclear what his actual ideas and opinions are. Readers must decide whether Hythloday's accounts are valid critiques, genuine recommendations, or pure nonsense. You see, he wanted to avoid directly endorsing or rejecting controversial topics, because that could have been a dangerous thing to do during his time. With this cleverly careful approach, he was able to challenge the audience to think critically, while also protecting himself from potential backlash. Now that we've explored two of Moore's rhetorical choices, you're ready to begin your reading of Utopia. Focus on the questions we've practiced. What choice did the author make? How does this choice affect the audience and message? And why might the author have wanted to create this effect? Remember, behind every text is an author with a purpose that you can uncover through the lens of rhetorical analysis.
Hey, hey.